Hey everyone, welcome back to Red Donkey Projections. I'm Eric and we have Lucas as always.
Hey everyone.
We're going to be talking today is the best case scenario for the Republican Senate election for 2020. This video is following the best case scenario for the Democrats that we did yesterday, and we will be talking about everything that can possibly go right for the Republicans.
And with that being said, let's get right into it. So as always, we're going to start out with the obvious safes that we don't think will change, despite this being a best case Republicans. Oregon probably will stay the same. Tina Smith in Minnesota will also probably stay the same. Obviously, she's not as well known as Amy Klobuchar is, but I do think that she has a pretty good shot of keeping this one as a safe, even in best case scenario. Cory Booker should have no problem winning this state again. Delaware is deep red. Sorry, deep blue. Delaware hasn't been deep red in a while. Massachusetts, this is probably, honestly, it might be either Joe Kennedy or I think it's Markley. I think honestly, I'm probably giving this one to Kennedy at this point. Let's see what else. Rhode Island, I think we will also keep this one as safe. I think it's pretty safe to say.
Mm-hmm. The East Coast, basically, even in the best case, will go to the Democrats.
Yeah. Dick Durbin, the Senate minority whip, probably will also stay safe. New Mexico is an open seat, but New Mexico has been swinging a lot more to the left recently, so I do think they'll probably keep it. I mean, maybe a likely, but I think it's probably going to be safe, either likely or safe. Alrighty, now let's do the safe Republicans, which there is a lot. We're going to start out by doing just the obvious ones. First, Al Gross will probably
in Alaska.
not. Yeah, will probably not be able to win in a best case. Mississippi. Lindsey Graham will go to a safe. South Carolina.
In a best case, yeah.
I think that is it. All right, let's get discussing with the non-obvious / flips for best case. First one on the board here, Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
Alabama will go to safe in the case that this is best case scenario because Doug Jones, although he's getting a lot of money, this is Alabama. He's either against a football coach that was endorsed by Donald Trump or Jeff Sessions, the former attorney general, so he doesn't really have much of a chance here. If we're talking best case scenario, Doug Jones probably loses this one pretty significantly. Eric, why don't you now, how about you talk about...
Are there any other countries that are flipping?
You mean states, right?
States, yes.
I don't believe so. With
all right.
The states. Eric, why don't you start by talking Texas?
Texas.
This is John Cornyn. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So this is John Cornyn's seat. In general, the Democratic candidate here isn't really well known. I've never heard of him, as I said yesterday. Without this even being a best case, Cornyn already had a good chance of getting the election or getting elected. And in the best case, this is safe. We would usually put this as likely just because of the things going on, but at this point, it's safe. Cornyn probably got this.
I agree. It's because they don't have a Beto or work candidate there. So especially in best case, this is probably safe for the Republicans. Alrighty. I missed West Virginia. That's also safe red. Let's also head to Kentucky now. Eric, you want to talk about Kentucky as well?
Oh, yep, sure. So this is a Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell for the Republicans and Amy McGrath, who edged out a win in the Democratic primary recently. She is more of a moderate, but in a best case, although Mitch McConnell is super unpopular, he still gets it because this is Kentucky and he is, although unpopular, a majority leader, and in the best case, Kentucky goes so safe as well.
Completely agree on that. It's such a red state that there's almost no chance. I realize I also forgot the state of Virginia. This is also a safe Democratic state. Mark Warner's here. Not North Carolina. But the Republican Party in Virginia really hasn't been doing that well recently. It swung so much to the left that it's pretty much safe for Mark Warner. All right. That should be the end of these safes. I think also for the Democrats as well. Anyways.
Yep.
Let's also now head to the likelies. First state, Jean Shaheen in New Hampshire. This state is in between a likely and a lean. In best case scenario, usually it's between likely and safe, but I think we're talking best case, in between likely and lean. And the reason for that is because polling does show Shaheen leading, and she is kind of well known. She did decline to be vetted to be Joe Biden's VP, but this is New Hampshire. This is relatively liberal. I don't want to say completely because, one, they do have a Republican governor, and two, they are technically a swing state. They're often referred to as being the south of the Northeast. But I do think that this will probably still go to Jean Shaheen, lean or likely, either way. All right. Let's now head to the state of Colorado's an interesting one. John Hickenlooper versus Cory Gardner. Honestly, this is in between tilt D and lean D. I would go with lean for this one. And the reason for that is because Colorado has been swinging more and more to the left recently. And obviously, as I said last video, Trump is a pretty conservative Republican. And Cory Gardner is supporting him, which definitely would not have a pretty good outlook in a state like Colorado, or at least the urban areas, because Lauren Boebert did win the 3rd district. That is more rural area, though. So, keeping that in mind, and keeping in mind that Cory Gardner won here in a red wave election year in 2014, which absolutely helped him. I don't think that he's going to have that same luck that he did with having it being a red wave year. And plus, with Colorado swinging more to the left, the best I can give him in a best-case scenario is a tilt or a lean. So I do think this will probably go to John Hickenlooper in a lean, even in best-case scenario. Eric, how about you talk about Arizona?
Yep. So this was a pretty tough decision that Lucas and I made. We were really not too sure of what to put this, just based on what's actually happening without a best case. So we all know Mark Kelly, Democrat, Martha McSally, Republican. We all know the scandal or the controversy of how McSally got appointed, not really elected, and Mark Kelly, the people of Arizona think Mark Kelly is like more favorable because, he was an astronaut and he's more likable in this case, just based on who he's running against and him as a person. So in a best case scenario for the Republicans, which means that everything goes right for Martha McSally, honestly, the best she can do here is a toss-up, not even a tilt R, just because of how much more in favor people are of Mark Kelly. He has a pretty good shot of winning this seat in Arizona. We really don't see how, even in the best case, Martha McSally could edge out a win here. So honestly, he would have to be at toss-up as a best case.
I agree. And even as toss-up, it's still in between toss-up and tilt D. Looking at polling, Mark Kelly's up by about 8 points in the most recent polls, so that is a pretty large favorability for him. Plus, he has a lot of name recognition. As I said in the earlier videos, even children know who he is, so it's kind of interesting. So I think that, honestly, Mark Kelly will probably edge this one out, but actually, I meant to put a toss-up, but Mark Kelly has a tiny, tiny, tiny lead here, even in best case Republican, but I think overall it's a toss-up. Alrighty. Let's head to Kansas now. Kansas would be an interesting one, actually. Best case scenario for Republicans, obviously Chris Kobach doesn't win. Best case scenario is Marshall wins, Roger Marshall. If he wins, this is pretty likely going to go to him. Honestly, I'd say likely and safe. I'd go with safe for this one. Again, Kansas is such a deep red state, and Kobach really doesn't have Kobach obviously is a really bad candidate. If he wins the nomination, this is probably lean likely-ish, but if Marshall wins, this is safer likely. And I'm thinking I am leaning a little bit more towards the safe here. I think that the recent polls do show Boyer leading Kobach by a tiny bit. But if we're talking Marshall, it's much more favorable for him. So again, likely or solid R for me on this one. All right, I'll head to Michigan now. Michigan, some put this as like not very favorable for the Democrats, but in my opinion, I think this one is either a lean or a tilt. I would go with lean on this one. John James is kind of well known, but he didn't win an election. He's what I would call a famous loser, aka like Stacey Abrams, Beto O'Rourke, where you get the name recognition, but you don't win. Or Amy McGrath too. You can add that in. But this is Michigan. I mean, it is kind of swingy, if that's the right word to use here. Trump did narrowly win this state, but there is still a pretty large African-American population here. And Gary Peters is leading John James in the polls by about also 6 points, about 6-8 points, somewhere there. So keeping that to mind, I think Gary Peters probably would edge out a win, either a tilt D or a lean D on this one. Alrighty. Eric, why don't you head now to Maine?
Yep. So Susan Collins, the Republican, is the incumbent here, and she faces Sarah Gideon. In real terms, Sarah Gideon is more favorable in the sense that Susan Collins is very, very unpopular, and that's really not helping her here, especially in the state of Maine, where it's primarily all state Democratic. So best case, it goes to her in a tilt margin because Sarah Gideon is just more favorable, and people of Maine think that she is more favorable. So Susan Collins could edge out a win here in best case, but only in a tilt margin.
Yeah, although she isn't unfavorable, we have to keep in mind the incumbency advantage here. I think that it's in between probably tilt R and toss up for me. And I think it's slight edge to tilt R in a best case scenario because I think Gideon would probably, why am I blanking out? Collins would probably win this one in best case, but again, we're not totally sure about that. Because again, she is very moderate. Maine likes to elect moderate senators. She has been a little bit too partisan recently, but I think she could probably pull out a win in best case. Alrighty. Let's head to the double Steves now. Steve Daines versus
Double
Steve
Steves.
Bullock. Recent polls have been showing, I believe, the Bullock lead, actually. I think keeping that in mind, Daines is definitely campaigning pretty hard. People have been getting a lot. I say this a lot, but people have been getting ads saying, like, vote for Steve Daines or whatever. I know that people have been seeing a lot of those. And I do think that he will be able to carry out a win here in best case scenario because he is moderately favorable, not as favorable as Bullock is, but also Montana is a pretty deep red state, and I think that will definitely help him in this state. So I give this one a tilt R. He probably carries it, but very, very slimly. Again, this one's in between toss-up and tilt R for us for this one. Alrighty. How about Eric? Why don't you run North Carolina now?
Yep. So as I said time and time again, this is going to be one of the most important races of the 2020 Senate elections because this determines if the Republicans maintain the majority or the Democrats regain it. We have Tom Tillis, the Republican here, and Cal Cunningham, the Democrat. Recent polls show Cunningham is up by 8 points. Not really looking good for Tom Tillis, but in a best case scenario, North Carolina is this battleground state. Tillis can edge out a tilt margin here for himself. So a tilt Republican for North Carolina. This is it's going to be a close race. I would personally put this toss-up maybe tilt D, because of just the recent polling that shows Cunningham in a pretty significant lead. And honestly, if North Carolina wins for Joe Biden, then they'll probably win for Cunningham, because that's just, 2 elections in 1 year. So that's just how it works. But in a best case scenario for the Republicans, North Carolina goes to a tilt R.
I agree with that. And I think turnout will be higher in the state of North Carolina as well. Let's discuss now Georgia. I'll just cover both right now. Georgia regular Alsop versus David Perdue. I don't know what's wrong with my memory tonight, but I think that it's probably a lean, and I think polling does show Ossoff leading. I think we would usually put this one as likely. If we're talking best case scenario, no, we don't usually put this as likely. We usually put this one as, I think we do put it as lean usually. I'm trying to think here. I feel like he might outperform. You know what? I think it's likely, and the reason because is, Ossoff is leading the polls, but Georgia is still a pretty red state, although it's been trending very quickly to the left now. Polling does show Ossoff leading by a little bit. Even Biden is leading a little bit here. But again, we got to keep into account polling bias. But I think this one will. It's in between lean and likely for me, but I think I'm going with likely for this one. And also Georgia special. This is Kelly Loeffler's seat at the moment. In my opinion, I think that in best case scenario, if we're talking best case Republican, Loeffler would lose this seat to Doug Collins. Doug Collins has a pretty solid shot at winning this one. Georgia special will probably also go likely. Actually, you know what? It probably goes safe if it's Doug Collins. It's in between likely and safe for me. I'll put it likely. It's in between likely and safe, somewhere in between there. Too hard to kind of judge right now. Eric, do you agree with that?
Yeah. If Kelly Loeffler would take the seat, it would not look good because of her scandal with insider trading. So best case scenario, she doesn't take the seat, and Doug Collins does, and that would be very good for the Republicans. And especially in the best case, I'd probably be likely safe. I would even put it safe as a best case, but likely is also fine.
Interesting. All right, cool. And I forgot to put in North Carolina. Oopsies. Forgot about that. Our final state is Iowa. Eric, why don't you discuss Iowa?
Yep. So this is Joni Ernst and Teresa Greenfield's seat. They're battling for the seat. So honestly, if this is a best case for the Republicans, Iowa can probably end up in a lean margin here. We initially did predict this was our usual predictions, but we realized that it's a lot closer than we think. This race, it's another pretty intense race. At the moment, we have it as toss-up, maybe even tilt D. No, we have it as toss-up, or actually tilt R, but definitely not for the Democrats. So if we're considering that this is the best case for Republicans, they can probably take it in like a lean margin, a very comfortable lean margin.
Interesting. I'd say in between tilt and lean, slight favorability towards tilt. Well, this one's a hard one, though, because, yes, Teresa Greenfield is leaning, but this is Iowa, and polling is kind of swung to the left a bit. I'll agree with you on this one. I think it is lean. Best case scenario, she does probably carry it in a lean. I think you're right on that. All right, cool. This is the final map, 52 for the Republicans, 47 for the Democrats. Thank you all so much for watching this episode. If you like our content, please subscribe. And, gosh, I messed up the order, but if you like this content, please subscribe. And if you like our videos, please hit the like button. We'll see you in our next episode tomorrow.
See ya.